Hey, what's up? Welcome to Mixed in America. Joining me is my friend Crystal Benton. Crystal, thanks for being here.
Thanks. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm excited to have some conversations that we've had as friends, off camera, obviously, but to kind of share them with the rest of the world or anyone that wants to listen. So let's jump right in.
Okay.
I suppose we don't have to waste a lot of time because we'll probably do plenty of that as this goes on.
Probably.
So let's start on track at least, and then when we get off track, it won't be as bad.
Okay.
Let's start with talking about your daughter. This podcast is about race. Conversations had about race. Your daughter is mixed like me.
Yep.
That's kind of your, I guess, most obvious tie to diversity. Obviously, you have a lot of friends and family and people you care about. And I know this is important to you, the subject of diversity and race and racial conversations. But let's start with there. Talk about your daughter being mixed in an all-white family.
Yeah, that's it's definitely something that I never thought about at all, really, until she started getting a little bit older. And Kalia has amazingly crazy curly hair, and it's got different textures in different places. And so, like, some spots are way more curlier and some aren't. They're more like my hair. And so it's just, we've always just kind of laughed about that. But this past year, with all of the George Floyd stuff that was going on when he was murdered, and our families, I can't say murdered. Can I say murdered?
You can say murdered.
I feel like he was murdered.
It's a murder trial right now.
There you go. So he's murdered. Okay. So, like, when he was murdered, our city fell apart.
Yeah.
But one of the coolest things was our city came back together.
Yeah.
And I really think that was incredible, just to even watch and experience and be a part of. So we were down in Minneapolis, like, helping to clean up, just kind of doing anything that we could as best as possible, and really do, like, just kind of clean up.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff was everywhere. And so we're kind of talking about what happened. We're talking about, and I have my children. I have 4 children. So Joel and I have Kalia, who's 10. And then we have Adelaide, who's 5. Emery, who's 3. And then Alden, who's 1. So there's like a lot of them.
Yes.
But we were all there. All of us working together. My kids, us. It was really cool. My parents were there, and really it wasn't cool in the sense of, like, this is a cool thing we're doing, but it was more like, this is cool that, like, we've come together as a city. And honestly, like, there were so many people out there.
Yeah.
Like, you had to, like, really look for stuff to do because everybody was out taking care of people. And it was really cool for me to see.
No, it was a cool moment. I feel like, obviously, the situation was a bad situation.
Yeah, it was rough, devastating.
I remember being there that first weekend, too, and there being so many people and churches from in the city, from outside of the cities, from people in that community working, people that weren't affiliated with any churches at all, but, like, this is their community, so they're going to help rebuild and help people out, and people passing out food and cleaning and rebuilding. It was a cool, obviously in a terrible situation, but it was a cool moment to see the city come together like that.
Well, for sure. I've never lived so much history, obviously, until recently. And so to kind of be, like, experiencing it from, I guess, the inside of the story, not necessarily super close, but anyway, as we were cleaning up, Kalia looked at me and asked, if my skin were darker, could this happen to me? And I was like, I'm sorry, what? First of all.
It's a heavy question.
I was like,
dang. Wow.
That's not even, I mean, it's never really been something that I thought of. And I wish I would have, but I'm grateful that I've navigated this a little bit through the help of lots of friends and conversations. But that question just kind of stood with me in the sense that we haven't done a ton to embrace that side of her or her blackness that she has within her. I mean, it's always just been who Kalia is. She gets the most beautiful tan in the summer. Gorgeous, holy buckets. And in the winter, she looks closer to us, like more of an olive, beautiful skin tone. But So it was just, I don't know. And so when she asked that question, and it kind of opened this whole door of like really big conversations about what race is even, and what it means, and what it means to us, but also like what it means to the world and how the world connects to it. It was a lot.
Yeah.
And she's a very inquisitive kid, especially at 9, you know, having that kind of a question in the middle of a parking lot cleaning up trash.
I didn't have those kind of thoughts and conversations at 9 years old, but I also didn't go through something like that at 9 years old.
For sure.
So to see that and witness, again, not for saying she wasn't there for the actual killing, but like she experienced the city on fire like that. And just conversations I've had with even like some of these Maranatha students who I'm going to try to have on later.
Cool.
Like what they saw and experienced growing up at that age is just, it's very different it's honestly very different than the world you and I grew up in.
Yeah.
We didn't see that kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Firsthand growing up.
Yeah. It's been very interesting to see. And like, I'm grateful that she's like it's so inquisitive, because we do get to have those conversations. Because at 9, I probably would not have ever thought about that.
So what do those conversations look like? Like, how do you? Was that intimidating for you to have? Because if you haven't had these conversations, a lot of the conversations I've had, even when I had Jocelyn on, was like, if you haven't had to have those conversations, you don't know how to have those conversations. Right. Which I think is part of what was the problem that maybe led to the racial tensions we saw kind of in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely.
That if you didn't have to have those conversations, you weren't comfortable having those conversations. Yeah. So you didn't have those conversations. So then when it became time to like, hey, white people, say something, do something, you're like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Like, I don't want to make things worse.
That's definitely the biggest thought, is like, okay, how do I navigate these conversations? Because you're stepping into identity, and you're stepping into developing and growing a human being that's going to have to survive in the world. But not only that, but is going through something epic. And so it really meant a lot for her that we were down there and we were marching with everybody and shouting. And that was kind of really, I don't know, connecting for her. She was like, we have to do this. And it was very unique marching with my 4 children, but it was a very cool experience. I'm grateful that my girls all of my children got to experience that. But and that kind of opened the door for the conversations. But there were plenty of times where she would ask something and I didn't fully understand it. Like I was like, let me head to the School of YouTube. We'll start there. And really having conversations with friends of mine. Yeah. And so learning that and whatever. And then we have like this beautiful little neighbor girl across the street, and they were out playing one day, and she had just gotten beautiful braids, like gorgeous braids. And Kalia was like, oh, I totally want to do that. And the little girl was like, no, you're not black enough. And like that kind of, okay, so you've walked into this world, and in this epic trauma situation, all of these people are banded together. They're whatever. And then you begin to kind of embrace that, and then you hear that. And you're like, wait, hold on. I am not black enough. And that definitely kind of brought everything to a bigger head. And we started, doing research on mixed hair, because she has so many different textures.
Because that's a very real. I've had these conversations with people before. Like, hair really is like a big deal when it comes to race, because, and not even just race. I'm sure white people deal with this too. I don't know, but being mixed, like the texture of your hair, is it that black? Is it black enough? And that's a real, I guess, conversation. And then I think of, most in general, if they're not adopted or biracial, like a mom would know how to do her daughter's hair. Right. Was that an intimidating process for you, or was that something different for you, learning like, no, that's a legitimate thing. Her hair is very different than mine. Right. What do we do with it?
Yeah, it was definitely a very big learning experience. And even kind of like standing and just staring at all of the products. And I'm like, where's the one that says this is perfect for mixed hair?
Yeah, good luck with that.
I'm like, because there are different textures, and I never had to think about that. My hair was just always what it was.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like necessarily in like white culture, I won't speak for everyone, but I don't feel like hair is necessarily as big of a deal for identity.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like we all want to look great and have great hair. But I don't think that that's necessarily like tied with their identity, and maybe I'm wrong. But so for Kalia, it took a lot of work and asking awkward questions of like, I don't actually know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know, and asking like how to untangle the really textured parts, and like how do we navigate, you know, all of it. And even just like, how do I protect her hair, and how do I, and so through that process, we actually realized that we were ridiculously dehydrating her hair, which, oh my word, like when I've heard people say like, oh, I can't come, I've got to wash my hair, I always just kind of chuckled because I hate washing my hair and I do it very seldomly. Thus the hat. But they like, it's a process, and I never ever even had to do that process. Like 9 years in, and we were kind of like noticing like some parts were like, they looked really dry and frizzy and crazy, and then other parts had like perfect cute little Shirley Temple curls, and so like as we started doing this, as we started asking questions and figuring out what products work for her hair, because generally like even if it is a product that's probably geared towards mixed people, it may not be the right one.
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't ever really have to like listen to my hair or whatever, but like really kind of observe and be aware of like what that product, how it affects her hair, and anything like that. And I never thought about it.
Yeah.
And as we started doing this, we noticed like a lot of her curls coming back, and her hair just looked so much better, and she felt better about it. And then it came back to the braids.
Yeah.
And she really wanted them. She thought they looked super cool. And I can generally braid. Like I can do a good French braid. But like after that, I was like, okay, are they just smaller braids? Like what am I doing? So that was a lot of YouTube, and just even like researching how they hold their fingers, because this incredible process that I've never thought about.
Yeah.
And the time that it takes to do these incredible braids, like I've never appreciated that.
Yeah.
But it's so beautiful, and it's so unique. And so for her, it was a unique experience.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember the first night we did braid her hair, and we braided her whole head, and there were so many parts that were like loose, and like I didn't get the stuff on my fingers to do it was just awful. She looked adorable, but as I knew what I was doing, I was like, oh, looking back, I'm like, wow, okay, that was the start.
Yeah.
And so it's been a lot of just trial and error, but trial and error with the people that actually know things. Like I could trial and error all day, but if I'm using only this specific clarifying shampoo on her hair, I'm destroying it.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, well, I don't know what that means. So talking to people and being comfortable saying, I don't know, is there any way that you would, you can help me? You got an idea? I really don't know. And I think that with racial conversations, that's the part that like, I don't know. I just watch people like kind of cringe at, like, in the people that have said things like, I should have known, or I should have noticed this. And I definitely agree. And I went through a lot of that, and just different conversations with Joel about how do we like develop this beautiful human and guide her as she searches for identity, as she finds her identity and what sticks for her. And then, but yet without isolating her from her other siblings.
Yeah.
You know, because we're one incredibly loud and very connected family, for the most part. And so, it's kind of like that concept of like, okay, how do we pull this into, how do we pull her like into this without making her feel awkward?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have to spend a lot of time on washing and detangling Adelaide and Emery's hair. And so like that kind of a thing. But luckily that's actually been a really, great time for us, like spending that time and talking through a lot of these things and having these conversations about identity. And I remember one time she just asked, like, is it just easier to just kind of ignore that? And I was like, well, ignore what? And she's like, well, that part, like, I mean, I look mostly white. And I've heard people say that I'm only black in the summer and that kind of thing. And so she was just kind of talking through it, but like, is it better that if I just ignored it? And that probably was the most devastating for me to hear.
Yeah.
Because I want people to be able to be so authentic and to take away a part of her that's, you know, she's at least a quarter Congolese, and to take away that and just ignore it and bury it so that it's easier or whatever was just absolutely not.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been navigating. It's a lot of asking questions like, I don't know, I'm sorry. And two, like when you say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing and somebody like brings it up to you and they're like, hey, you know, that was kind of awful. Don't do that again. And whatever, instead of like getting super offended and like, because it's embarrassing to be told you said something stupid. Yeah. You're like, I'm a grown up.
Yeah.
Don't correct me. But we need to be corrected. And I feel like if more people were like that, even in regular conversations when somebody starts getting disrespectful, like, hey, I don't appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know, there are those kinds of conversations.
You gotta call people out, or allowed to be called out, if you're gonna learn and grow, or if people are gonna learn and grow about stuff. Like, there are people who, they would say something offensive. They had no idea that this was offensive. They shouldn't have said that.
Right.
If they haven't had, like we talked about, if you haven't had conversations with black people before, how do you know if that was offensive or not? One, you can expand your circle and actually talk to people that don't look like you. But the first time you do that, it might be awkward. But you have to be willing to learn and grow, and I have to be willing to point that stuff out to you to help you learn and grow.
Oh, absolutely. Otherwise,
none of us are getting any better.
Right, and that's the thing. Like, we're not connecting to the things that we keep missing. And it's ridiculous. So for me, I'm always like, I try to just be as gracious as possible, apologize, especially when I get their names wrong. And that's for anybody. Like, people have the most incredibly beautiful names that have more letters or random letters that I'm not used to. And therefore, I'm going to like mess up saying this name or this letter combination. And but it's so important to take the time to like really genuinely learn their names and other people's names in general. Like, your name is a huge part of who you are. And I look at these people who change their name so it's easier.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's ridiculous. Like,
that's something that we can get better at in general, is learning people's names. I don't care if you're black, white, from a different country, if your name is John. Like, looking people in the eyes and learning their name is a very lost art in, I'll just say, my circles right now. Like, with me and the people that I don't know really outside of, again, my own circles, my own experiences, but I don't think we as people do a good enough job of like seeing other people for who they are and getting to know people.
Yeah, I definitely don't think we do that well. I think that there are incredible people that are trying and doing their best to learn. Just like I am. I'm like just navigating. I'm like, just if you have ideas, if you have things to share with me, I mean, shoot, leave them in the comments or email me. I don't know. If you've got tips, I'll take them. But even navigating culture and navigating identity and things like that, it's all a part of her like who she is and who our family is, because our family identity also includes these different parts, and that's been really cool. We've learned fun things about the Congo and different things like that, but also like keeping it for everybody to know. Like it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to teach Kalia this. Like, no, we can, no, absolutely not. Good. This is a part of our family's identity.
Yeah.
Where each of us like make up that identity for our family. And so without Joel's personality and Kalia's personality and their pieces, you know, it doesn't come whole, I guess, if that's making any sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that's great. Most people don't have difficult conversations. That's why they're difficult conversations.
That makes sense.
If you just actually get yourself in practice of having difficult conversations, then they're not so bad. And you can have them first with friends.
Yep.
And then you can have them with, you know, I wouldn't say strangers. Don't go up to like a random black person and be like, hey, what's it like to be black?
Oh.
That's weird.
Probably super awkward.
As you expand your circle and meet new people, you can have potentially difficult conversations with people. Yeah. With everyone.
Well, I think that's like, that's just start is the hardest part for people. Like the first time you have to admit that you're wrong or that you don't know something. Like we have such an issue with not knowing, and I'm 100%
it's funny that
one
you're
of
the
those
one talking
people.
About that because you hate not knowing anything.
I do. It's a very big struggle for me to not know everything all the time. But when you do, like you admit, like, I don't know. I don't know how to do this. I'm awkward. I'm uncomfortable. I'm sorry, but I know that I need to be here and connect with you and understand your world. And that's something I really want to do. And so it's like, just take that first step. Just have that first incredibly awkward conversation and begin to connect with your friends. And then too, like the more people you encounter, like you're going to have people that you'll run into at certain events that you're doing and whatever that become your acquaintances, and being able to have those conversations in your friend group and whatever as you develop even like a new world of friends. Like if you don't have any black friends or any sort of diversity in your group of friendships, like you kind of need to try something new to like bring that in. And it's so incredible, the people that you encounter when you take the time. Like, okay, for example, when I graduated from school, I had no idea like what I wanted to be when I grow up. And honestly, I still have no idea what I want to be when I grow up.
That's fine.
I got time. But like, so I was like, well, I'll get my generals done or whatever. And then, so I goofed off for a while. I don't know. And then I was like, okay, I should probably do this. So I started at North Hennepin, and North Hennepin is incredibly diverse and so amazing to be there because the people there it's just a thing. Like everybody's got their purpose. Like they're not just, especially like when you run into like adults that are taking classes. And
I mean, I've seen the show Community on NBC. I'm assuming it's just like that, right?
Right, exactly the same as Community.
You got the single mom, you got the old guy, you got the lawyer who faked the bar exam and then had to come back.
Right,
football star that got hurt.
Yeah, so plenty of diversity. You got everybody.
Exactly.
It's all inclusive. But just being in class, like I got to meet some really incredible people. And I remember like, because like I felt like growing up in the school that I grew up in and the church that I grew up in, there wasn't tons of diversity. And I don't think that was necessarily intentional in any way. It just kind of was what it was. And so, I had some diversity in my friend group or whatever, but like not tons. And I remember being in an English class, and our teacher like put us in groups, which I already like with social anxiety have like issues with small groups because I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's so silly because the minute I start to get to know the person or the people in my small group, I'm like, these people are great. I love them. It's so fun. But like, it's that initial,
yeah.
These people are going to be working with me and I have to work with them. And I don't know. So group projects, not my favorite. And the group that I was in, ended up being, the entire group was Muslim. And so I was like, cool, this is going to be great. But at the same time, I had no idea. Like, it was super intimidating. Because I'd never encountered that.
Yeah.
Up to that point, I'd never hung out with a group of Muslim people and watched their culture and the way they interact and all of that and how they do group projects, which way better than I do group projects.
Is that hard though to do better than you at group projects?
No. I'm so bossy and I have to know everything.
Really?
But then I also don't want to do all of the work. So, like, I just want to boss you around and tell you what you should do and how it's the right way to do it.
That doesn't go over well in small group settings.
Maybe that's why I hate them.
Probably. To be fair, the people in your group probably hated them too.
Probably.
No, I'm sure they love being in your group. You're great.
It was awkward. It was the first conversation and, like, the first invite to, like, hey, let's work on this. You guys can all come over to my house. And I was like, this is new.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a weird thing.
Right.
But it's a common thing.
Yeah.
Like growing up in the church, because obviously, like, and I support having friends and people who support you.
Yeah.
And I'm not telling you should go out and hang out with wild and crazy people and do it.
Sure.
I think it is important to have a good, strong support group in your local church or whatever that looks like for you. But the fact that a lot of Christians, and I would say the same way, I grew up the same way, literally same church and school.
Right.
But like, I never really interacted with anyone of of different faith, but not to that extent. And so it shouldn't be such a big deal. It's not like I'm trying to convert them or they're trying to convert me.
Yeah, we're just trying to get an A.
Can we just have a conversation? Can we work together on a project?
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be a big deal.
It shouldn't. But it should be so normal.
It is if you don't ever step out of that bubble that you're in.
Yeah.
Again, not knowing how to have these conversations, not even a difficult conversation, just a conversation with somebody. And a lot of people spend their whole lives only surrounded by people that look like them and act like them and talk like them and think like them. And they never know how to even have a conversation with someone who doesn't look like them, think like them, act like them, talk like them. Crazy. Yeah,
and I was very sensitive to the fact that I did grow up in a Christian church, and so I was like, oh, I don't want to say anything that's disrespectful or rude or even do something. Like, I don't want to be that way. In general, like, I want to respect your space and who you are. I think that's so important. Authenticity is like a favorite thing of mine. And so I was very nervous, like, I'm going to mess this up somehow because I just had no idea. And the most incredible thing was these guys were incredible friends.
Yeah.
And my awkwardness and all of that became a joke that we just laugh about now. Like, it's like, hey, remember when you were super awkward and you thought you were going to, like, offend Olive? And I was like, I do remember that. Thanks for bringing up an embarrassing moment.
Yeah.
And it was just like... And so it's like having those conversations, like even just the first, like, step out and have a conversation like, hello.
Yeah.
Start saying hi a little bit more often in the supermarket or, like, do people even call them supermarkets?
No, I was going to call you out for that, but I decided to be a nice person and let that slide.
Yeah. I don't even get my groceries.
I don't know the last time I've ever heard the term. I don't remember the last time I've heard the term supermarket.
Yeah.
Isn't Spanish supermercado? Isn't that Spanish for
I think
grocery store or whatever?
Yeah. I don't even go to the grocery store. I go to Target.
Yeah, which isn't even technically a grocery store.
No. Like Cub Foods or whatever. Whole Foods. Trader Joe's. Shouldn't there be foods in their title?
I think it is Trader Joe's Foods is technically the...
Oh.
No, it's not.
Oh.
That is
I literally believed you. I was like...
That's good.
Oh.
That's good.
Wow,
You should trust
interesting.
Me, except when I'm lying about stuff like that. So, yes, Great. I love this. I love in the conversations we've had, you've talked about, it was those people at school of a different faith. We've also had a lot of conversations about the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go into right or wrong or like break out Bible verses, or I'm not trying to defend or whatever. But
good.
The conversation that I want to, because this isn't the place for that. I want to have what a conversation I want to have with you right now, what I talk about is even if you don't agree with someone, right? If I come across a Muslim, like I'm Christian, I don't have to try to convert you. You don't have to try to convert me.
No,
Can we still love people? Can we still have these conversations with people, even if they live a different lifestyle than you and you don't agree with them? As Christians, aren't we still called to love people?
Yeah, I feel like that's something that, and I look at these Christians and I feel like they're just desperate to do the right thing. Like, how do I do this? And, you know, there's some Christians that believe like, oh, to love them is to call them out and to this and that. And, or to love them is to fully accept everything that they've got going on. And it gets so complex. And for me, it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's literally just treat them as a human. It's like, okay, would I like literally walk up to my friend and be like, so tell me your story. Like, what do you got going on there? What?
Yeah.
What in the world? Who cares? Yeah. At that moment, we're meeting, we're making friends, we're getting to know each other. You know, and we're serving the community together. None of that matters. I mean, I would feel really awkward if somebody were to come up and like be like, okay, so what's your like relationship with Joel? I'll be like, none of your business.
Private, yeah.
None of your business.
Yeah.
But we get so hung up on it. It's like, oh, I'm like, once I know that, I'm so awkward and I don't know what to do. And it's like, why? It doesn't even affect you.
Yeah.
And as much as like there are people that are concerned and all of this big mess, if you set that down and you literally look the person in the eye and have a conversation again. Yeah. And when it comes to encountering people, whether it be people from the LGBTQ plus community or a random person at your grocery store, like all of the same things apply.
Yeah.
Like treat everybody you encounter as a human being, and that's the minimum, in my opinion. Like that's like, if you're like, I can't do anything, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to do it, start right there. Yeah. And I feel like we get hung up on things like labels and different things that like catch our eye and we're like, oh, that's not right. Well, no, it's not necessarily right for you in that moment. Fine. Yeah. But like, why? Like, why do you have to call it out in that moment? You just met this person kind of a thing, or like, why are you even letting that stop you? And I understand it goes back to those uncomfortable situations. Like if you've never talked to anybody or you've never heard their story, and it's the biggest thing is like, if you take the time to listen to anyone's story, you're going to see the parts where you guys connect. Yeah. You're going to see the different moments or the different like, oh, I went through that as a kid, or I tried that, or there's so many things that we connect as human beings. And I think that that's the minimum of where you start. But then, you know, as Christians, it's like we want so desperately to please God and all these different things. And so there are people that are following other people that said other things, and it's all kind of connected for them. And then it kind of puts up a wall, I feel like. And maybe not a wall, but like a fence or something. I guess, I don't know.
I'm not sure the distinction between a wall and a fence. I mean, they're both
well, because a fence you could kind of, like, I was thinking chain link fence, so you can see through it.
Okay.
So, like, you can still have a conversation kind of, but you're like...
But you're guarded.
You're so guarded. Yeah. And as humans, we encounter similar situations. With people that we never even knew we would. Yeah. Like, you never have that conversation. Like, just even the two of us and our personalities. Like, you follow every rule there ever is 100%.
I love rules.
And I think that they're more like suggestions for the most part. Things can be navigated and anyways, but
I know, but that's fine. That's fine for you, right? This is a good example of differences, but we can still
but then there's things that are similar. Like we both really like checking things off of checklists.
Yes, I love lists.
It's so great. And so those kinds of things, like, okay, that's where we connected. That's a thing that we can have a conversation about and laugh about how ridiculous it is that we care that much about lists. But, so there's a connection there. So like, we're super different. This is a very different personality style. Like, but then when you connect to those things that do connect, it's so simple to have a conversation, regardless of who you're talking to. And like, I look at the LGBTQ plus community and they've been through a lot. And not to like say that other people haven't, but when you take the time, you hear their story, you hear the rejection or the trauma they faced because they're who they're choosing to love. Like, what? And you can't be rude or disrespectful. The minute you treat someone like a human and that's your minimum, and then you hear their story, you connect on the pieces that you connect, and then you choose to respect the person. And I think that is where we get kind of uncomfortable, like, especially with the church and pronouns. I get it that it's confusing. I understand. But if you don't ask, you're never going to know. You're not going to know what it's like. You're not going to know whatever. But that's one so simple way to connect with somebody in the LGBTQ plus community, or, just the minute you meet someone. Like, what's your pronouns? Like, just, it's super chill. Like, you can say that. And it's not uncomfortable because you've done it more than once, or you've done it once, so the second time it's not so bad. And that shows them that, like, you accept them as a human being. Regardless of whether you believe that this is this way and this is this way. Like, you can be completely opposing. Yeah. Completely in opposite directions. But you connect on the fact that you're human beings, and this is something that matters to this human being. And this is something that you can then care about too, because you care about that human. Yeah. And so there's like simple things like that, like taking the time to learn people's names and really pronounce it correctly. If it has to be awkward, it has to be awkward. But have the conversation. Oh, sorry. Can you say that again? I'm so sorry. Like, I really do want to learn your name. I keep pronouncing it wrong. Yeah. I'm gonna get it. It's just, that's so normal to connect with people's humanity. Yeah.
Couple things that, from what you had said, that stood out to me. One is, I think a lot of people, and maybe they're gonna get mad that I'm defending them this way, but like, will call out other people out of a good place. Like, they're trying.
Oh, absolutely.
I think a lot of people really do have their hearts in a good place, and they see something and get, sometimes people, they say love is correcting them or calling them out and stuff. Yep. I get that. A lot of that. Not everybody, because there are people that just hate, for sure. But there are definitely
like
people.
That's their hobby.
Which is, why would you want to live like that?
I don't know, sounds boring.
I wouldn't want it. But people that are in a good place, or that are coming from a good place, that want to love people and want to help people, or want, truth is important to them, or right and wrong. People that like rules, like I do, right? It's from a good place, right? Rules are good.
Yeah, for sure.
The big thing to me that I'm hearing from a lot of what you're saying, and it's something that me and LVC talked about in the last podcast. If you've listened to that yet, you should go listen to it if you haven't yet. But
what number is that?
But it was just the last one, so 4. Okay. Season 2, episode 4. All right. For those of you listening to, watching, go check it out. After this, go back. But he talked about, he did some time, sounds like jail. With his work, went down to the border wall right at the time when that caravan was coming up. Okay. And he worked with ICE would pick people up, and the families and stuff, they would drop off. I'll listen to it. You can hear his whole story. Okay. But basically, he did work at the border wall with these families, and he was like taking them in and helping them. They were giving them food to eat, that kind of stuff. Okay. And he said it really made a difference to see them as people. Mm-hmm. When you actually talk to them face to face and hear their stories, you see them as people. And a lot of people have conversations about policies or about rules and regulations or about, but they don't have the conversations about people. Yeah. And they don't take the time to see people and to know them as people. And the conversation that we had was kind of like, wherever you feel about the border wall, about border control, about start with, these are people. Yep. Like, it's okay to believe that it's in the best interest of us to have stricter laws at the border. Sure. Stricter immigration laws, that's fine. But
you can
start with, they are people. Understand that these are actual people. Yeah. And so much, especially when you're talking politics, and it shouldn't be like this in religion, but it becomes that way. I guess if you want to do the cliche about religion versus relationship. Sure. And say, okay, in religion it's, but
I feel like even in relationship, people are like, in that relationship with God, they're like, this has been incredible to me. Yeah. And this has made a huge impact in my life. And I would love to share that with you, but they do it in the worst ways. And they're so awkward about it sometimes because they're just so excited and they just want to share. They're like, get your butt to church with me. And you're like, oh, no, thank you. Bye. And so I look at people that haven't taken the time to, like, if you've ever, like, just even think about it. Like, your family's together, things are going well, whatever. All of a sudden now your family is completely separated because of certain situations that don't fit. You kind of sit back and you're like, oh, wow, that would be devastating. Yeah. And you kind of, it's something like, even just, you can do it while watching the news. And you hear some story of something that somebody's going through, their life or their whatever, and take a second to sit back and put it into your world. Yeah. And regardless of whether circumstances are the same or this or that, when you take that step back and you're like, if this were happening to me or if this were my son. Yeah. It's you come to a different place. Yeah. And that is, you see people. And I think that's so important.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about this a lot, and I feel like everything kind of comes back to this. Yeah. But regardless of somebody, if they're black or white or gay or straight or a different lifestyle from a different country, whatever they do for a living, right? Police officers get judged sometimes just because they're a police officer and people want to say something negative about them.
Yeah, anyone, and accountants.
Whatever. Yeah, of course, accountants, yeah. Yeah. People don't like accountants.
There are certain accountants that people would be very judgmental towards.
Like tax accountants, like IRS. Maybe. If I found out somebody worked in the IRS, I'd probably have bad stuff to say about them. I mean, I wouldn't, but people don't like the IRS. Packers fans. I'm not there yet. I love everyone but Packers fans right now.
I try to see the person and the brokenness that they're going through.
I agree with you on every other person in the world. I'm not there yet with Packer fans. You guys can pray for me. Oh, man. I need to allow God to move in my heart.
Yeah, you got to start seeing the person.
To love Packer fans.
Under that cheese hat.
Yeah, it's hard.
Wow.
It is hard.
It's very difficult.
All right, well, this has been long enough. Yeah. I appreciate you taking the time, having this conversation with me. I do want to, before we close, give you one last opportunity to maybe drive a point home, a takeaway, one thing you want people that watch this or listen to this conversation. What's one thing you want to make sure? Take this away, please. If you don't listen to anything else, remember this.
So I would probably say just love people in a practical way. So that may mean learning their pronouns or respecting their pronouns, and you're going to get it wrong, whatever. But do your best and learning people's names. Those things are so practical. Ask questions about their culture, whatever. So practically loving people, I feel like, starts with just taking the time to, like, get to know somebody, connect a little bit. It doesn't have to be hours and hours, you know. Yeah. But definitely to love in a practical way, or to love people, or to kind of, I feel like, and it sounds cliche to like, oh, love the whole world. We're gonna be a bridge.
That does sound super cliche.
It's super cheesy. Oh my gosh.
But that's okay.
But in reality, I do feel like that's gonna have a very big effect on the future. It may not break up all of the systemic racism and all of that. It might not break up every issue, because people are still people, and there are plenty of dumb ones that I love.
Because we love everyone, even the dumb people. Yes.
There are going to be people that make terrible choices. It's just a thing. But practically love someone. Take the time to figure out what love for them looks like, even. Because who knows? Like, if you're a Minnesotan and somebody's bringing you a hot dish, but like you're bringing it to someone who's from Nigeria, and they're like, why are you giving me this, and what is happening, and why are there so many tater tots?
Because they're delicious, that's why.
I know. And so in my world, that's practically loving someone, right? Oh, I heard you were sick. Here's a hot dish, or whatever.
Sure.
But that may not be what they need.
Yeah.
That may not be what speaks to them. I mean, it might be like, oh, thank you for the gesture.
Yeah. It's a tough word. It's okay.
Oh, thanks. But in reality...
But loving them how they receive love.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it does. It comes back to take a second, get to know them, ask them a question.
Yeah.
But I feel like so many times we're told, we need to love everybody. We need to love everybody. And nobody says, like, how.
Yeah.
And I feel like the how part is actually the best part, because you do get to encounter new people. And I'm not even a person that loves talking to a lot of people all the time. I'm definitely an introvert, but it's still incredible to hear somebody's story, or even just a little tidbit about where they're from. And, you know, oh, we don't eat meat. So if you're showing up with a hot dish, you know, it's like, well, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like that's probably the biggest thing to take away. That was probably a really long takeaway.
Yeah, I was thinking like a sentence, maybe two. But it was good. It was good. And I'm sure the listeners and the viewers appreciated that. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you guys for watching. Join me next week for Mixed in America. Hey, thanks for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, can you do 3 things for me? Can you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and tell your friends?